So here we're at a stage of actually making cases for this newest crazy expedition to 100,000 pounds per square inch. As I've said before, the PPC came along and it jumped up the pressures from 45 to 60,000 psi cartridges that had been around for 100 years to a new high pressure cartridge that the military had designed that they then modified and turned into the most accurate cartridge on the planet. And now another case has come down. Another case has debuted. I'll show you the box again because I decided to take it out of the garbage. I threw it away in prior episodes. The new 277 Fury. 277 Sig Fury, and the case is made in pieces. So we started to take this thing and work it down to make something that would be interesting to me. And boy, did that turn into a labor. Here is, luckily I have a lot of presses and but this is what I've done. Just trying to look at this on the monitor here, which is why I'm not looking at you. But what I've actually done here is, these are all actual dies. Here's my thing. I can make dies. I have kilns. I have 12L14 lead alloy. I can make and harden dies and sizing dies. That's a huge problem. It was cheaper for me or more worth my time, whatever. I made the choice to go through my die boxes and grab up a bunch of appropriate dies, throw them in a lathe, whack those bad boys off, and just make forming dies for this thing, because I want to take the 277 Sig Fury case and do something with it that occurred to me the minute I saw it when it came out. Hey, there's a 100,000 PSI case. I need that. Don't need it for what it is, because 277 and me have no relationship whatsoever. I might have shot a deer or two with a 270, and I know I've loaned several 270s to people because I called it a good deer. My brother-in-law shot a deer with one of my 270s. But I will never explore the 277 Sig or the 220 Russian. But I still use 220R cases to make all of my PPC stuff. So this is going to end up being the same way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pan down and I'm going to start showing y'all all what actually goes down in the making of this stuff. This is just the dies I used to step these. This case starts out like that. Much bigger than I want it to be. So, with these dies here, and with the assiduous use of my current favorite really serious lube, this is Permatex Ultra Slick, and I filled this whole top reservoir and I would dip my finger in it, it's a mess over there where I started forming this stuff. But I feel that to do you due justice, I'd like to show you the methods that I use. Showed you last time how I tore these cases apart. There was nothing salvageable. So you take a standard case, and the first thing you do is take something in a 30 caliber die. I won't go through with you what all, but I think this is stage 2. And I ran it into that. And I pushed the shoulder back. I flattened the shoulder out. You'll see a bunch of changes going on here, and it's really hard to give you a short course tutorial on this, so I'm not going to. This is another phase where I've gone down even farther. And again, I'll show you the short tutorial. Another phase where I've got it down. I decided to go ahead and run these pretty much all the way down. There it is, all the way down, shoulder push back, big long neck on there, ready to neck turn in the lathe. This is one of the things that I've just learned recently to do. This case right here got something, a fold in the neck. This is probably an imperfection in the case from the factory, and when I move it this much, sometimes these show up. But I use this one for illustration because it has that crease. I don't think I'm going to even finish, well, I'm not going to finish that one out. And then here's the case, all the way down. This case actually fits in the gun. And with this case, I played around and experimented. I had two choices. I could either, this end is fixed, I could either headspace here for my jam fit, crush fit that I require for good fire forming. The last pushback threw a little bulge out here, but I can still get a really good bearing here. But instead, I decided to go ahead and headspace on the mouth of the case. So I had to come, this case might be sacrificed because it might be too short. And I don't know that I want to blow it out. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a lot of steps involved in that. At this point, I've got to decide to trim it to length or see what's going on there? I don't have a good picture. This is a Kelbley Atlas action. It's tracking down from, there's where it's bottomed out, and here's the bolt going down. I'm not getting a good picture here, but it goes down to a tight, ooh, real tight. Didn't even want, I've never done it with that position. Nice tight, let's say, crush fit. And that's with an unturned neck, which would go in right now, and with about that much clays in it, I could fire form this case, and it will probably be a finished product. But to those of you who have watched my recent fart blossom footage, I set up a whole thing from the start. These are extremely expensive cases. I got to buy a $100 box of ammo, tear it down just to get my 20 cases. And there's nothing else to do. You can't buy these cases. They're completely experimental. But I want to be on the ground, feet down, when this stuff becomes available. So this is one iteration that head spouse is on the case mouth. This currently is small enough to go in, but it's unturned, which means I'm going to have to punch it up onto a mandrel and turn it off. Now I'm kind of anal about turning everything together, so this is kind of in limbo right now. What I've done is taken another case, boy, this lighting is something else. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'll put it up even closer. I don't know if you can see. For some reason I'm having trouble seeing how that cutter feathers into the shoulder and presets. But this case goes in, and this one has been neck turned. Oh, I gotta shut that noise off. Sorry about that. I better put it back in my pocket so I can reach it without discombobulating you. This is turned, it's still full length, and now I can bring this back. I've actually got a paper here that shows that. This was the paper. Fart Blossom experience led me into this. This whole row of numbers here is that I started out long and I trimmed back until I got the feel that I wanted. This paper right here is a sequence of the main dies that I used. Started with the 308, blah, 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 went to the 06, went to the other 06, went all the way down to kind of drew a picture of the effects that I got until I'm down to where I could put this thing into the case of the actual gun that I chose to use. And this gun is a tested and proven platform. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. And I did it a different way. This is a turned neck. For some reason, I'm not getting the focus or the light right to be able to show you that it feathers into that neck, but it does. So this is a turned neck. This case is ready to go, and I did the same thing, only I started with a long neck, I turned it, I ironed it out from the inside. Now I put this in, same way. You watch right here, you'll see it come into view. There's the case, and then you'll see it close down as I close down. This again closes down and headspaces on the case neck. So what that does, that allows me to be not sloppy, but one of the hardest things to do is get an exact, when I set head spacing shoulders on my normal stuff, I take a case and I knock it down, neck it down, shorten it down, reset the shoulder, whatever, and I do it in one badap-badap. And I adjust until I get the feel that I want, so I can go tunk, 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 do 50 cases, headspace on the shoulder identically, fire them and blow them out, whether I fire them with bullets or whether I fire them with Clay's shotgun powder or the equivalent. But in any case, what I'm doing here, again, this is the long one. I threw it back up here because I decided to try it backwards and see if it could show the reverse, the way I feather into that shoulder. And so I've got the cut and I've got the feather into the shoulder. But getting that exactly right is really problematic. So instead, I got these roughed in, turned in, and now I trim this neck to length and I headspace on the case mouth. We learned that from the 50 fart. So now we've got a case in there, and you can see, I didn't even bother to focus this. We've done enough Tez Long stuff, and you got, now this old barrel, whoo-hoo, there's so many reasons it might not even shoot. It might only be a fire form barrel. But this barrel, this stock, this mule, it's almost an homage to its history to do this testing in this barrel. But there, right there, that's all I can do. Two different ways to arrive at head spacing on the case mouth before and after neck turning. And I'm going to try fire forming a few cases and decide which way works best. Because I don't rightly know. This old beast has been everything, and it shoots well enough that I can test with it. If I were to really sit down and break it down, this weird taper that you see, I'm just going to digress for a minute here. This weird taper that you see right here is because I used this barrel in my nutting, because it always shot well. It's good. It's had 7 different chambers in it. There's 2 of them showing right here. Another one marked on it, and it's just been everything. I could tell stories about this gun and this stock and this setup, but suffice it to say that I did some barrel nut testing. This was a barrel nut. The threading here, it was out a little further, and it had a really fancy, well-machined, super hard, big diameter. This right here is not, nothing's normal, but that's all been shown in prior episodes. But in case you're wondering why this barrel looks funny, it's because I took this barrel nut and I put some goop inside of it that locks it up, and I tightened her down this way, nice and tight. Shortened up the chamber a little bit, and I glued this forevermore on. And then I re-headspaced, re-timed, redid everything on this the last go around. Made it a 6x47 Lapua. And this right here is nothing but a spacer that goes up to the recoil lug that allows me to get my 150 foot-pounds of torque on this monster. I wanted this tight. The other thing I did, one of these days when this barrel's off, I'll show it to you. But it's a funny looking thing. I left 5 threads on it. Only 5. I don't know if it's worth drawing the threads on there, but then I cut this down out of the way, all the way up to that recoil lug, which is perfectly fitted. So it's got air in it. It's just floating here. It's pulling way back here on the back of the tenon. And this is not doing, it's the testing to show that only these threads are doing any work anyway, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, this goes like this, and it's got a recoil lug on it, and it's all, so the action itself has been hollowed out, hogged out. I call it nanooked because in the interim, Kelby's has come up with an action that they call the nanook. This one is cut down. You can see it cut right through the lettering. These are pinned, but they're 2-piece. There's a bunch of other. I don't know that this is still a 1/4 minute. It's probably got 1,500 rounds through it. I think it might have started as a 243 Ackley at one time. But it's a good fire form barrel for what we're doing. And in the meantime, we'll partially test out the accuracy parameters. But on the good side, I've got a half a dozen other guns chambered in this. I'm going to throw these out here. A couple of my matchboxes here. Just because I've got a little time on this video. This is kind of how I do some of my match stuff. This is the chamber that I have here, which is a 216 Nick 6 neck. I've got it on several different guns. Got a bunch of notes here that don't mean anything to you. This is a cartridge I've campaigned for years. As I showed before, this particular set of cases that I use for load workup has got that many firings on it, which is, I don't know, 40 or 50. These have all been fired 20 or 30. And this is the case we're going for with this new thing. Obviously this hasn't been fire formed yet. Once it blows out, that neck will shorten up, these sides will pop out, and this thing will come around to where it will be. I might have picked the wrong one. This is the case that we're mimicking, and this is a known, won a few matches here and there, some paper and wood. Definitely takes the firings, and now we'll be able to make up some new cases to run with it and see just what the rip. I don't think there can be a more fair test, apples to apples, than to make new cases from scratch for a known paradigm that's got cases already working and shooting. I would take that to a match tomorrow and feel completely set at a 600-yard match. That thing cruises. It runs 105. Well, let's see, I've got 105, 108, and 107. Anyway, 105-ish grain, 108-ish grain, 6mm bullets, which loaded, what is this? Oh, that's a 6x47. That's an old case with landmarks on it from being, it's actually for one of my barrels. It's the case that I used for one of my barrels. I threw a couple in there, but anyway, it will shoot right against known stuff that's been out winning in the not too distant past, prior to the retards all voting for us not to shoot anymore, and we're losing all of our rights to shoot in the end. But when it's all said and done, this thing might be used to defend the readout for all I know. But right now, this is all full-on, full-blown, lots of money competition test platform. And I'll be able to take these new cases and set them up in here and use them, and then go out and shoot them in paper hole poking, match winning test beds. I've got 5 or 6 of them up and running, and I can't think of a more fair test than to make cases for a known platform and compare them to the known winning platform characteristics and find out, does this thing set the world on fire, or did I just waste many, many, many days in little 1, 2, 3 hour chunks of coming in after work and trying stuff? This has been a labor of love making these cases, and I don't know if I'm going to show you any anymore, or if I'm now going to take this whole mess of fire formed and changed cases. I don't know that I need to tell you that much more about them. If you're going to go on the road to making cases, and if there's interest someday, I'll make some videos on it. For now, I'm going to just jump ahead a bunch of steps and say, this is the gun that I'm going to start testing with. This is the dies that were used to make the case. The case is, these are the various steps. I just wanted to jump in here and photograph them because, you know, it's kind of apparent to be able to see the differences between them as they go through their iterations, and realize that anybody can do this if they'll commit the time. And in this case, I decided to stop short with a long neck, trimmed nicely, turned off in the lathe, which goes back to some of my prior work about learning how to do that. And then I'll cut it back to the proper length, headspace on the mouth, and I don't have to obsess about the fact that these shoulders are not identical. They're going to pop out, they're going to blow out, and at that point they'll be identical. It's kind of bass backwards, but I see no reason it won't work. My prior work just in the last couple of months proved that the concept of head spacing on the case mouth for fire forming is sound.